Thank you so much, Ms. Nayo Campbell, for being the first guest on our Color Vision series called "How She Got Here." This did used to be a more digital format, but now we're bringing it with a visual and video. And you are the first guest, so we want to appreciate you and give you all the thanks for being that. But we can go ahead and get into the interview. So I would love to know a little bit about where you're from and how you grew up and where did you grow up?
Yeah. So, well, thank you first for letting me be the first guest. Hoping that I look a little decent.
You look great.
Was over here looking for the lip gloss so I could just kind of make sure my lips were popping. Um, but I'm originally from the PG County DMV area. I grew up in PG County, Maryland, Hyattsville, Maryland, in the backyard of University of Maryland. Went to school at Howard University, you already know. But yeah, so I grew up in Maryland my entire life. It was I look back on it now, like as I grow up, as a grown woman, I guess, and just like it was just such a great place to grow up and to be and to meet friends and to live, especially because now I'm living in Utah. It's a very, very big difference. But sorry, hold on. I'm gonna flap my pants.
You're good.
Okay, yeah. So it's just such a great place to live, especially growing up. Like now living my life in Utah, it's like completely different. Like Maryland, I feel like it's like 95% Black, or PG County is like 95% Black, and Utah is 1.5. So it's a very big swap. But yeah, it was such a great place. I have two older brothers. I'm the youngest of three. I am so I had the pleasure, my brothers are 8 and 9 years older than me. So they're a lot older than me. And I always I felt like I had to fight for attention, but I really didn't. I was the only girl, so it really wasn't that hard. But in many ways, I follow my mother's footsteps. My mom was a television producer, award-winning television producer, Emmy-winning television producer. She was that woman. And in many ways, I kind of followed in her footsteps, not knowing I was following in her footsteps, until I got to college. Fast forward, I went to college at Howard University, like I mentioned. My dad is actually a professor at Howard University, so I kind of grew up there. I
Yeah.
grew up like a Howard baby in many ways. And yeah, so does that answer your question?
Yes, it did. It's crazy because I always interview people who work in media, and everyone always answers like the first three questions. And the one question, I guess, is just a media thing. Like you already know what's coming next. But
We used to be talking. We're so used to talking.
I'm sorry.
I said, we're just so used to talking.
Exactly, talking, and we just know what you about to ask, so we just say what we got to say in one spiel. But I did want to go back because you mentioned that your mom was someone who was doing producing work. So at what point in your life and what was the moment like when you recall that you wanted to do the same things and follow in her footsteps?
That's a great question. I didn't realize I was following in her footsteps with my mother. I literally thought I was going to be an actress, and I thought that was going to be like my career, my path. And then I got into Howard, and I got into a bunch of different schools for acting, but then I get into Howard, and I didn't get into their acting program. Like, and it was actually such a crazy time. And so I was trying to decide like what I would major in. I was like, let me just try broadcast journalism, and immediately like I fell in love with it, and I was good at it. I was great at it, and it was something that I love to do. So I started doing packages. I loved being in front of the camera. I loved being able to tell stories at first when I was at Howard, I used to tell stories on like the drama department. But I just remember like bringing my mom a package, and she's like, okay, this cut here. Oh, this cut looks a little weird. And I was like, what are you talking about? And she's like, oh, this right here, this right here. I was like, what? Like she actually like knew, like I knew what my mom used to do, but I didn't know that she was still that good at it. And so I would come to her with ideas, and she would have great ideas, and I could just bounce it off her head or bounce it off. We just go, back and forth. And she's like, okay, that would look better with this. Oh, you can make your assignment better with this. And so I didn't realize I was like following in her footsteps, but it was probably at that moment that I was like, yeah, I'm going to keep doing this thing. And I'm going to continue to, just make my mom proud. So.
Yeah. So what was that one assignment where you were like, oh, this is it for me? Like, I'm ready to start doing this seriously. Would you remember that one package where you were like, yes, this is it?
I don't know if it was a package, it was more so an interview. I believe it was like my first big celebrity, or one of my first big celebrity interviews. And it was with Post Malone.
Ah.
But he came to Howard, and they had us interview him, and he's like, yo, like that was really dope. Like I really enjoyed this conversation. It was a quick little 3-minute interview, but I just started realizing that I was good at this stuff. And so I did that interview, and then I realized like, okay, I can actually create my, like I can push myself to go and audition for this and do that. And not audition, I can push myself to go get this interview and interview this person. And I can come up with these 5 questions and I make people feel good. So I think that was probably one of the early moments. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. I think also like with my days in Spotlight and having those early packages my freshman year, and then telling me, okay, this looks good, this doesn't look good, this is why you're good at this is why you're not. And hearing them kind of tear my packages to shreds also were kind of like, okay, I'm good with this criticism. How can I make this better?
Yeah. So since we're talking about Howard and its education and how it supported you at being a journalist, in what ways do you feel that Howard contributed to who you are as someone who works in media?
I mean, Howard contributed in so many ways to who I am today, because I think like the amount of times that you're told no at Howard, I think I tell this all the time, but you're always told no, right?
Exactly.
Right?
Yes.
Okay, we're always told no. And then what's something very similar in media? We're always told no. You're told no for an internship. You're told no for press credentials. You're told no for this. You're always told no, no, no. It's never a yes.
It's never
Right?
yes. You get
It's
told no
never
financial aid in the A building with your professors.
exactly.
Like nobody tells you yes at Howard
Exactly.
University.
It's
Yes.
never an immediate yes. And so I think many times like having that unfortunately, because you're never told yes, you're always told no. You're always trying to figure out ways, okay, so how can I turn this no into a yes, right? So
Mhm.
how can I make this happen? And so I always say that I got my hustle, or my hustle was really built at Howard.
Mm. So like what were, as far as your coursework, how did being at a HBCU really teach you how to be a Black woman that works in journalism or in film or whatever have you, in media?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think being like you're surrounded by so many beautiful, powerful Black people, um, that you're really just, how great we are, and how great we can be. And you're also aware of the fight that we have to get. We have the fights that we have to get to those yeses, right? The fight that we have to get into those rooms. So because I was surrounded by that, and then also still able to give so many ample of opportunities, it's given me a confidence when I'm in these rooms. It's given me a confidence to speak on my history, to share my history with others, and to be able to celebrate my history. Sometimes we can kind of try to be afraid of our Blackness and who we are, and not to be afraid of our Blackness, be afraid of being too Black, right? But I get to the point where that's who we are, and I'm proud of who I am, and I'm proud of my culture. And if I'm going into a white space, I'm still going to remain proud and who I am and what Howard taught me to be.
Absolutely. And I feel like it's actually something that I don't want to say I struggle with, but I'm always weary of because, when people ask me, so where are you trying to work and what are you trying to do? And I'm like, for real, my passion is about Black women or Black people and being a part of the Black community and giving out information. So it's like, how much of a burden do you carry when you walk into these rooms and you're like, I am Black, obviously.
Mhm.
Like, are they expecting me to vouch for, have the Black voice when I step into these rooms? What goes through your mind when you're sitting there and you're giving your ideas and it's something pertaining to the lines of, Black women or Black culture as a whole?
I think that's always tricky because you want to make sure that you're representing who you are fully.
Hmm.
But at the same time, I guess you don't want to be limited to a box. Um,
Yes, exactly.
but yeah, in a lot of these rooms, I am the only one. And so I know when I'm brought into these rooms, most of the time they do want that perspective because they need it. I work in sports and entertainment, and a lot of entertainers are Black people. A lot of athletes, and especially in the NBA, are Black men. Speaking of, and a lot of athletes are Black men and women, but speaking specifically to the NBA, they're
Hmm.
Black men. And so when they're asking me to come into these rooms and ask me to look at certain outfits or talk to them about this or have these conversations with these guys here, I know my Blackness is important, and I know my Blackness matters, especially in these rooms. And so I can't be afraid to hide that or not be my full self, and not be afraid of being that Black woman. But also at the same time, knowing that being a Black woman doesn't mean the stereotypes that some people have already built, right? And have
Right.
those things that people have already perceived you to be. No, being a Black woman means that we are smart, we are kind, we have a lot of personality, or not everyone, but Black women, you know, we, at the end of the day, we are strong. You try to be careful with the word strong because it says that some people are like, okay, well, I'm strong. Does that mean I'm not allowed to be weak? No, we have our weak moments too. We're passionate. And we're aware of the journey that we had to get the journey that we had to take in order to get to where we are. And so I try to bring my full self and my Blackness with everything that I do. But of course, you don't want to ever fall into those stereotypes. So that is something that can be a challenge.
Hmm. I love that.
Thank
Now, that was like, oh, let me think about that.
you.
But I did want to express to you, it was actually something that I wrote when Professor Thomas had gave us our blogs after we had our speaker series. And she was so mesmerized by the blog that I gave because I recalled one of my first encounters on Howard University was with you when I went for a spotlight interview.
Uh-huh.
Sitting, I don't even know what building I was in. It was my first time walking campus. And you came in, I think you were leaving out. And I was sitting there waiting for my interview, but I was like 30 minutes early, like super prepared, super on top of my ish. And you mentioned like, oh, you're on time? Oh, I like you already. And you walked out and I'm like, who was that? I'm like, oh yes, I love it. Cause it's like being in LA, you don't really meet a lot of Black women or Black people in general that give you like positive, you know, like positive energy. It's like a transfer of energy. And when you said that, I was like, who is that? So I had to ask. And someone was like, oh, she used to be the general manager of Spotlight, blah, blah, blah. And I don't know why you were there, but you were in and out. And that was one of the first encounters that I had on campus. And like that caused me to think about how important it is to instill positivity in people when you don't even know that you're making a change in their life. So in what moments for you as a journalist where you know you've heard feedback and you're like, I really appreciated that interview that you did with such and such, I learned XYZ, like how did that make you feel when you learn about people being touched by your work or just by your words in general, and you don't even realize that by you walking in your purpose, it's just kind of giving someone a glimmer of hope or giving them an ounce of happiness, like for that one moment?
I don't know. At first, she was about to make me cry. I was like, "Wow, that's so kind." I think, like, first of all, like, I'm glad I'm glad you got a good encounter the first time because I try to be that way. But no, seriously, like, I think um, so many times in the industry that we are in, and it's no shade to Black women, but oftentimes we're put up against each other, right? And I want to tear that down so badly because it's so hard. At the end of the day, there is space for us, but we're always just taught that there isn't enough room for us at the table. And so because of that, we're afraid to help somebody too much or to be too kind because you don't know if that's going to be the person that's going to take your job. Now, if you're meant to be in that place and in that job, then you're going to stay there. But you're going to keep working your tail off. And at the end of the day, it shouldn't matter if you go and you help somebody else get to where they need to get. And so at the end of the day, I think that, I mean, like right now, like when you told me that, like, you know, I try so hard to be positive with everyone that I meet. I try to give a smile, and I try to let people know like you're here for a reason and you're doing it right. Because if you're not telling people, if you're always only telling people when they're doing something wrong, then how is that actually going to help them grow, right? It's important to know what you're doing wrong, but at the same time, you need those words of affirmation. You need to know, okay, right, you know what? I was here 30 minutes early to an interview and she noticed that. And maybe the next person won't know, but at the end of the day, I don't know if that's going to be my first impression. So I think that's super important. Like you showing up, you being on time, you having your resume ready, you being ready. I'm going to be the person that's going to reinforce you, but I'm also going to be the person that's going to tear your packages to shreds too. But the first thing that you're going to get from me most of the time, unless you do something wrong, is going to be positive vibes, because at the end of the day, I do want you to feel comfortable that you can come to me, that you can chat, because you don't always get that in the industry that we're in. So I appreciate you sharing that with me. That means a lot. I think I was there. I mean, after I graduated, I worked with WHUT for a year. So that's probably why I was in and out.
Yeah, and I came in like, what was that? That was fall 2018. I transferred in. Yeah. So, and you were like,
yeah, you
were going to an interview or something. I think that's what it was.
Yeah, were you in the lobby of WHUT?
I don't think it was a lobby. I think it was like a room that was near that area. It wasn't WHUT in the lobby. Like you were in that building. I don't even know what building it was, to be completely honest with you. But you were like in there and you were like rushing out, and like we exchanged